If you're a sourdough bread maker, you will have come across the issue of what to do with all the discard you create as you're refreshing and activating your starter if you've taken a break from baking. The word discard implies something you don't want, like expired coupons or single socks, or that mysterious container in the fridge. But this is something you have watched, nurtured, fed, made grow, gave it a name like Dolene, Clint Eastwood, Blob Ross, Vincent Van Gogh, Professor Bubbles. But today we're proving that sourdough discard is not trash, it's just pre-crackers. In fact, after you've tried these delicious snacks, you might just start making out crackers and use your leftovers to make bread. So normally I do a rye sourdough starter just because I like the flavor and I find it a little bit more active. I use it in all my breads, but you can use whatever starter you want. In fact, I have just finished a Einkorn sourdough video. I will put it up here somewhere. So I have a bunch of leftover starter from that as well. So today I thought I would do a head-to-head just to test out rye starter versus Einkorn starter on the same cracker recipe to see if there's any difference or if one's better than the other. I know these are amazing. I have a pretty good idea these are going to be incredible too. So I'm going to do a rye starter with some einkorn flour, and I'm going to do an einkorn starter with some rye flour just to test it out. Now, full disclosure, this is pretty much Caroline Leventhal from King Arthur Flour's cracker recipe. I will link in the description the original, but I've done a couple tweaks for fresh milled flour, but it'll work fine with just any kind of flour you have got as well. So these are both 225 grams. That's about a cup of 1-to-1 sourdough starter. I've got the rye and the einkorn. You can also use wheat sourdough starter if you like. I have already ground up some einkorn flour that's going to go with my rye. And that just means I need some rye to go with my einkorn. Jealous? And I am just going to do a cup into the mill. And out comes rye flour. So I'm going to start off with the rye starter and do exactly the same recipe with the einkorn, but in reverse. So I'm going to put the einkorn away for now and start with one that I really know works fabulously. This starter is, after you've made your sourdough bread and you've got your leftover starter, pop it in the fridge and just leave it for 4 or 5 days and let it finish its fermentation process. And you can leave this for, this one's 2.5 weeks old. I've gone for 3-4 weeks before even. It just gets better and better. As long as there's no mold on it, it is great and safe to use, and it's gonna get tangier with age. So I'm going to do this in my stand mixer. You can totally do this by hand as well if you wish, but we're going to be using the stand mixer later on for something else anyway, so might as well start here and just make my life a little bit easier. So I'm going in with 225 grams of rye sourdough starter to start with, and then bring the rest of my ingredients here. I've got my whole grain einkorn flour. Now, if you want to use a wheat flour, if you want to go with the rye, that'll be totally fine as well. I just have some einkorn and I love the taste of it. So in with that, I am going to 115 grams, or about also a cup of fresh milled flour. Perfect. To that, about 60 grams or about 4 tablespoons of room temperature soft butter. This will help it mixing together rather than having some clumps. If you do have cold butter, you're just gonna get your paddle attachment out there and beat the tar out of it. About a, I don't know, half teaspoon of salt, depends how salty you like your crackers. That is 2 grams. And then some herbs to mix in. Now I've done tons of different herbs with this before. I've tried za'atar, I've tried onion and garlic powder, I've even thrown in some Parmesan, but my all-time favorite and the family favorite is your classic sage, rosemary, thyme. If you want to throw some parsley in there and get some Simon Garfunkel on, go right ahead. But I'm going to chop these up. You can use fresh herbs or dried herbs if you like, about 2 tablespoons all together. All right, and as I say, I'm just using fresh herbs. Dry herbs were perfectly fine. I just don't have any at the moment. I've got fresh herbs in the garden. So I've split that in half for my 2 different batches of crackers. And in goes half the herbs there. Now we're gonna take this to the stand mixer to get it incorporated. All right, so into our stand mixer we go. Again, you can do this by hand if you want. This is just way easier. I'm gonna use a dough hook just because it's way easier to clean. And all we're trying to do is just bring all of these ingredients together, kind of turn them into a stiff dough. So on medium for a minute or 2. And what you're looking for is to just get that ball of dough together there. It'll be quite sticky. And you're looking for something a little bit like this guy here. Just a ball you could probably pick up. Should have a good bit of little stick to it depending on how warm your kitchen is. And this has got to get covered or wrapped up and popped into the fridge for at least 30 minutes. You are totally fine to go longer than that. I've actually left this dough in the fridge for a week before making crackers. Turned out fine and amazing. Again, it's just gonna get tangier and tangier as time goes by. All right, and we're gonna do the exact same thing with the einkorn discard. Again, lovely sticky mess. And into the fridge for that to firm up and make your cracker dough. Okay, couple hours later, and I've got the rye starter with the einkorn flour, and you should end up with a nice little solid, firm brick of cracker dough. Perfect. Just like this. Should be nice and pliable, and you know, kind of like a cookie dough after it's been in the fridge for a little bit. With this, you're going to need to bake your crackers. Get yourself a half sheet pan. Now, if you've got one of those fabulous, you know, Silpats or something like that, they work great. They're amazing for a lot of things. I actually find that I don't like them with the crackers because they insulate a little bit too much, so they don't get as crisp on the bottom. So I'm going with just some plain parchment paper in here. Now, I've got the stand mixer out, and for most cracker recipes you're going to find, they're going to get you to roll it out to a perfect, precise thinness here. I think the recipe that they call for is a 1/16 of an inch. And I don't know about you, but I am terrible at rolling evenly or getting that perfect 1/16 of an inch. And with these crackers, if you've got thick spots and thin spots, you're gonna get some burnt, you're gonna get some not very good. Now, I know they've got the little rollers that you can put on your rolling pin and roll them out here, but this is where I diverge in my recipe and have come up with another idea, which is one of these. And this is one of the pasta roller kits that you can get often for the Kitchenaid. You can get manual ones. I guarantee you somebody's given somebody else a present for this, and you can go by the thrift store and pick them up for dirt cheap, because you've got a lot of great intentions. You want to make the pasta, and yet you just don't. And so I do occasionally make some pasta for myself and for my family, but to be perfectly honest, this thing gets way more use out of making crackers than it does out of pasta. A great present, but I use it all the time for crackers. So if you want to, go right ahead and hand roll these out, you're looking for a nice even 1/16 of an inch. But this does a great job, is a ton of fun. If you've got kids who are safe around something like this, my kids do it all the time. All you're gonna do is break off a chunk of dough, roll it out, get yourself a bowl of rye. This is the leftover from what I ground earlier. I wouldn't use the einkorn because it tends to stick to the rollers a little bit here, but this is just gonna stop the dough from sticking to that. If you just dust it, just get yourself a little small bit like that, and then you're gonna start off, this is, for me, I found the perfect 1/16 of an inch is starting off at the 0, turn it on, and just run it through here. The kids love this, they have a ton of fun with it. Then drop it to number 2 on, at least this is the Kitchenaid branded one. And I'm gonna stop there. And little shaggy cracker bits on the edge here, no problem. This is the perfect, nice thickness for your cracker. And if you want, you can bake them up just like that. Or you can get a pizza roller and you can cut them smaller if you want. But an idea here, if you've got one of those like little cottage bakeries in the States, you know, cook up a bunch of these, wrap them up, throw them in with a block of cheese and some cured meats or something. And man, that is the perfect little gift that people will buy. And they look just deluxe. They look a little more gourmet. We'll check them out. I'm gonna leave a whole bunch full here for this, but just again, pull off a little, I don't know, tablespoon and a half, set it to 0, flatten it out a bit and push that down. Switch it to number 2 on the Kitchenaid. Your pasta roller may be a little bit different. They smell tangy, they're fabulous. Just lay them out on the sheet pan, and I'm gonna skip ahead. So that one batch of rye did 2 half sheet pans of pasta roller crackered, and they're all laid out here nicely. So I'm gonna have to save the einkorn ones for another batch come in, because that's what my oven will do. Now, just before these get in the oven at a preheated 350 degrees, you want to grab yourself a little bowl of olive oil or something like that, and a pastry brush or a silicone brush, and you're just going to gently brush the tops of these. It'll help them crisp up nicely. It'll also help some salt stick to them and give them a little bit of flavor. You could use a neutral oil if you like, but the olive oil imparts a lovely flavor and makes these a little more deluxe. All right, once olive oil on all of them, you're gonna get a fork, and I want you to dock each one of these, which is just, you know, pop some little air holes in there. This will stop the crackers from puffing up. And if there's any steam that forms underneath, then that can get released and you don't end up with bent crackers. Make sure you do that after you put the oil on. That'll stop the crackers from sticking to your fork. And lastly, just take a generous pinch of salt and kind of sprinkle it up over top. Depends how salty you like them, but you need a little extra on the top there. So those are gonna go into your 350 degree oven for my oven, 22 minutes exactly, but yours between 20 and 25 minutes. You're gonna wanna turn them after about 10 minutes. So if you put 2 sheet pans in like so, I want you to flip them around and invert them at about 10-minute mark, and then check them after about 20 minutes to see. These go from perfectly crisp to a little bit burnt in no time. So get to know your oven and just keep an eye on them in those last few minutes. 22 minutes later, and the entire house smells amazing. It's this really sharp sourdough tang, very different than bread. But they've been turned once, partway through. Oh, there we go. Yes, just about perfect. All right, just like that. And you'll see they got a nice brown. This one right here, maybe even just on the edge there. So do watch them on those last couple minutes just before your alarm goes off to make sure they don't get overdone. Now they need to rest for just a couple minutes to cool down a bit, and then you'll have delicious, delicious crackers. In the meantime, I'm going to make a second batch with the Einkorn starter, and we'll do a little taste test comparison. So both batches done. We've got the rye starter with the Einkorn flour and the Einkorn starter with the rye flour. For the second batch, I just used a pizza cutter to chop them up into little bits. This is great if you want to put them in for lunches or little snacks. Oh, we're gonna do the proper taste test here. I also left a couple whole so they are equally comparable there. Slight color difference, but not too much on them. Let's give them a try. This is my classic. Let's try the new one first. This is the Einkorn starter with the rye flour. Oh, so nice, so crispy. Good, really good. Light, clean, very crisp. Here's the classic. Not as tangy as I'm used to. Oh, yeah, even more tangy, a little bit more rye, but this also was fermenting for probably 2.5, 3 weeks. So a lot more tang, and I love that. Almost like Parmesan cheese in there, but there's none. It's just got so much umami and so much, a little bit of funk. Oh, it's really good. This goes great, just plain like this, obviously, but make some hummus or with your soup, or dinner tonight, cheese and crackers. Enjoy. You will never go back to store-bought crackers again. I made some hummus to go with it. They're so good. Oh. Oh my God. Do that. I'll put my favorite hummus recipe link in the description. Oh God.